Hi, Latinx House family. This is Monica Ramirez, co-founder of the Latinx House. It is so great to be with you. Olga and Alex send their love. They can't be with me today for this wonderful conversation, but we're all really thrilled to invite the Bibi familia, my familia, here for a little convo about the film, about why it matters so much, about their special partnership with Southern Poverty Law Center. And I am just so happy to get to share some space and some time with these wonderful folks. And let me introduce quickly who I have with me. We have Jam Longoria, who is the lead actor in the film Bibi. He also wrote and helped really make the magic happen around the film. And we have Victor Dueñas, who is the director of Bibi, also a good friend and co-writer of this beautiful short film. We have Adriana Barraza, who is the lead actress, who really needs no introduction because I'm sure all of you know her and her incredible work. So pleased to have you here. And then we have my friend, Edward. Hi, Edward. Enriquez Cohen. Hopefully you have been tracking Edward and all of his good work, because Edward has spent, in addition to being an executive producer and a producer of Bibi, he has just spent so much of his career uplifting Latinx community members in entertainment, and we all owe Edward a debt of gratitude for what he does to lift us all up in our work. So thank you, Edward, for being here and for what you do. And Vanessa Perez, who is also a producer, but you have a long career in the entertainment industry, also bringing to light the stories of the Latinx community. And we're so thankful for your leadership and for all of the hard work that you've done on this beautiful film that I'm really proud to be part of, Bibi. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for entering and being part of the Latinx House and Familia. And, you know, for me, this conversation is meaningful because I'm part of this project, proud to be one of the executive producers. And for those who don't know much about Bibi, I would love for JM to give us a little bit of background on the story of Bibi. And for those who are going to tune in, what should they expect?
Yes, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you, Monica. Thank you, Latinx House, for having us. Also for being a part of our wonderful film and helping us bring it to life. We are so grateful. Bibi is it's a film of love, and it's family. It's so many things. It's love, hope, forgiveness. It's actually inspired by my real relationship with my dad growing up. When I was little, I had trouble communicating. So my dad would say, if you can't speak it, write it. So for many years, he and I had this wonderful tradition of letter writing to talk about things that were really hard to talk about. You know, being two men, being two Latino men, growing up in South Texas, a very small conservative border town. And it was sort of a way to sort of talk about things that we couldn't really do face to face. And that really struck a wonderful relationship between my father and I, to the point that as I got older, I felt confident enough and open enough to come out to him. So Bibi, in a way, is sort of a love letter to my dad for that wonderful tradition that he started with me. And it's a work of love that, you know, Victor and I co-wrote together and that our wonderful team brought to life. So expect some hard conversations in the film. Expect the reality of relationships between a father and a son, but just family members in totality, because it is a universal sort of film. And just kind of like those moments that sometimes are tough between our relationships with our loved ones.
Yeah. Thanks, JM. And so you brought Victor into the conversation, and Victor, I want to bring you into this conversation too. So JM has this wonderful story, this love letter to his father, and the idea to turn this into a film. And you then embraced it and helped make it happen. So share with me, what made you decide to make this film a reality, and how were you able to work jointly with JM to turn Bibi into the film that we all have an opportunity to see today?
Yeah, well, again, just as JM said, thank you so much, Monica, Alex, Olga, and everyone else at Latinx House for inviting us to chat a little bit about this project we have. We're so grateful, honored. So one of the things that to me struck me about this story was the fact that this was not a relationship I had with my father. And not just as a as a man, but just as a Latino in general, it's sometimes hard for us to talk about difficult things. And when he told me the story of how he and his father sort of related to one another, I thought, I don't know. I think there's something there. You know, I think that there's an opportunity to introduce or reintroduce the idea of letter writing as a way of communicating between people. I mean, how many of us have written a letter lately? It's taken us a while. But I mean, in this time of COVID, I think is a perfect example of how letter writing can kind of come back in vogue and really be able to bring people together. So I thought we can tell this story inspired by JM's life. We can reintroduce letter writing as a form of communication that not only gives people an opportunity to process thoughts and process big topics that need to be discussed, but is very part of all our cultures. As Latinos, you know, there's a very strong culture of letter writing in our cultures. I mean, you know, there's movies that have been written about this. So I thought this is a great opportunity to create a project like this. So yeah, thank you so much. You know, JM kind of like humored me, and so as we started sort of pitching ideas, and that's kind of how it happened.
I was like, I have this idea of this thing, but I don't know what to really do with it. And you know, this is the first time that I've written anything as a writer specifically, and this is Victor's world. So he's like, yes, there's something here, let's develop it. And slowly but surely it became the story that we all love.
Yeah, well, I fell in love as soon as you brought the idea forward and told me the project you were working on. And that was really sort of the conversation that Edward and I had, right? Edward, I remember us sitting on a patio having a conversation about the work that you were doing. And you said, hey, what about this film Bibi? And then we started talking about potential partners. And so the partner that we brought to the table was Southern Poverty Law Center, which some might say was an unlikely partner, but I think for all of us here, it seemed like a very natural fit. Edward, why did you feel like Southern Poverty was the right partner for this project?
Well, listen, first and foremost, my dear, thank you, because it was your, you know, our conversation sitting down at that table. I remember very clearly at Cheesecake Factory and talking about the project overall, and you're inspired, you automatically knew exactly who was the right fit for us. And I think a big part of it was because, and the most important part was because of the Teaching Tolerance program. Southern Poverty Law Center has an amazingly beautiful program that's taken their initiative and their program to over almost 1 million schools nationwide now to teach 6th graders through 12th graders the importance of tolerance of themselves, tolerance of others, breaking the bullying in school, to really do their best to try and break the warfare that's constantly happening in our school system, and try and, you know, help the suicidal problems that are happening in our school system and educate one another to try and change young lives, which is extraordinary. And in our conversation, it was just something that came to light, and we knew right away that it could be the right fit. And then we took it to Maureen Costello, the former director of the Teaching Tolerance program, and she read the script and right away reached out to both of us and said that she loved it and that she saw the vision that you and I discussed. But first and foremost, it started with you, my dear.
Well, I thank you. You're giving me an awful lot of credit. I mean, you made the magic happen. I just knew somebody that
you
could
knew where the connection was.
Yeah, but you know, I think, you know, for me, as you all know, this film is very personal. One of my family members came out through a letter, and so that is why I really felt strongly about being associated with this project. And when talking to Southern Poverty about this project, I remember, you know, we had a lot of conversation around the need to have critical conversations, and that in our society today, it's really challenging to have critical conversations that are both instructive and productive, and even more so with young kids. I would say that the themes that are brought up in Bibi are so crucial for our Latinx community specifically, and for kids. And so, Adriana, you know, you made a decision to become part of this film. You're the lead. You do an incredible job, beautiful job in your role. Pero para usted, ¿por qué es importante que nosotros llevamos este mensaje a los niños de nuestra comunidad latina, pero también con otros niños en las escuelas en todos los Estados Unidos? ¿Qué significa este proyecto a llegar a las corazones y las mentes de estos niños?
Bueno, principalmente, mi querida Mónica, de verdad, muchas gracias por tenernos, muchas gracias por la historia hermosa de que formas tu parte de este hermosísimo y no solamente hermoso, sino tan necesario cortometraje. Mira, más que nada, cuando Edward me explicó la historia, luego leí el guión, lo sentí como un deber. Yo creo que no soy la única, creo que todos los seres humanos han estado en contacto con personas, si no ellos mismos, pero han estado en contacto con personas de la familia, de sus amigos, y los han visto sufrir y tener mucho dolor al tener que tomar la decisión de cómo le digo a mi alrededor que soy gay. ¿Cómo le digo a alguien que soy diferente? ¿Cómo le digo, y de veras soy diferente? ¿Cómo me siento? A veces de verdad puede ser tan terrible que puede llevar a que terminen su vida las personas, especialmente cuando son muy jovencitos. Entonces, cuando tuve esta posibilidad, lo sentí de verdad como un deber, por mi propia historia, por mis amigos, por mis familiares, como en tu caso también, por mis familiares, que he visto su dolor y su necesidad de cómo encajo en este mundo. Entonces creo que este cortometraje forma parte de algo que es una base para que todos quienes los vean, maestros, adultos, niños, puedan iniciar una conversación tan importante como ¿qué hago? Edward te puede contar lo que nos ha sucedido, experiencias de verdad increíbles cuando hemos llevado este cortometraje a los festivales internacionales. Siempre habrá alguien que se acerque y diga, ah, así me siento, no sé qué hacer, ¿cómo puedo? Mi amigo se suicidó, él te puede contar cosas muy serias. Entonces, creo que por lo particular yo me siento muy feliz, muy honrada de ser parte de esta posibilidad para que la vida de alguien pueda ser tocada de una buena forma. Agradezco, pues obviamente, que a todos mis compañeros, de verdad, que me hayan incluido en este proyecto querido.
Very, very quickly, Monica, to touch on what Adriana just said, is that when I came onto the project, I was one of the first ones to be fortunate to read the project. And it was a calling for me as well. It was a calling for me as well as soon as I read it, because just 3 months before that, my father had passed away. And I had a very, you know, a much more closed relationship with him as well. And, you know, it was, but we made peace before he passed away. But it was something that I wanted to both honor him as a man, as a Latino man in his generation, to have, you know, his generation understand, and our generation try and, you know, really understand where they were coming from, or where Latino men have come from, and also to give the opportunity to open up that conversation so that young men and women don't have to go through what many of us have gone through in the past.
Thank you, Edward. And, you know, and that brings me to you, Vanessa. So this film is now available, you know, through SPLC's network to many, many school children. Will you talk a little bit, first of all, as a producer, you had to help take this beautiful film and actually work the mechanics so that all the pieces were in the right places so that it would become the final product that it is, which I'd love for you to talk a little bit about so people can understand sort of what that looked like. But also you had to turn it into something that was going to be appealing to young people. So, you know, share with us a little bit about that process. And also if you could talk a little bit about the mechanics of how kids are able to view this film through this partnership with SPLC.
Right. So yes, again, thank you for this space. And I think it's great to be able to talk about not only the film, but also, like you said, the experience of filmmaking, because I think that it's very important for, I think one of the biggest things is for students to take away not only the message, but also the desire to tell their stories. And I think your stories are extremely valuable, and you'll see that whatever resonates with you or whatever doesn't, it's still a great place for you to try to understand what's my story, what do I need to say, and we all have stories to tell. So just make sure that, I think that in the bigger picture for me, and like you said, like as a producer, that's exactly what I do. The mechanics of it are, I'm a producer because I'm passionate about people who are telling stories, and I'm extremely passionate when it's people that I feel close to and that I feel deserve that space. And so I think that, to me, the mechanics of a producer, it's a very big picture project oriented thing, but at the same time it's taking care of the details. So again, it's very task oriented. So you, as a student who perhaps is aspiring to filmmake, it's like, just literally go to your network, gather your friends, and create something. Like, this is what it's about. So I think that's it's something that I think we want to make sure that is accessible to students, and that notion of how you can create. And I think specifically to what it feels like to have, or what, having it in schools and having it be part of curriculum. We did a talk yesterday about it, and you can see that teachers are very much in need of, voices that look like the Latinx community to say, this is a story for students. And they're like, this is exactly what we need. So I think, again, like it's very nice to know that there is a genuine desire and need for us to be talking about this to the community that is needing this story. So I think that to me is the most important part about it. I think that teachers are genuinely grateful and interested in knowing that there is a story told by the Latinx community about Latinx youth.
And so the film was released, you've been to some film festivals. Adriana, alluded to this, some of the reactions that you're getting from folks at these film festivals. Now that it's been released, through SPLC's Teaching Tolerance, for each of you, what have been the high notes? What have been some of the really memorable moments since the film has come out? And from those moments, do you feel like the film is doing what you wanted it to do? I'll start with you, Jam.
Most definitely. I mean, the responses have been incredible, and it's a broad range, and everyone has had their own experience. I think a couple of highlights for me were right before we premiered, actually, one of our younger actors in the film, his mother came up to talk to me and was like, hey, I just want to thank you and let you know that what you're doing in the film with the letter writing between parents and their kids actually works. And she's like, my son was not wanting to go to school for a few days, and he was making up every excuse on why he didn't want to go, but he wouldn't tell me why. And I was getting so frustrated until finally I was like, well, why don't you just do what you're doing in the movie? And so he did. He wrote down what was really bothering him, and it was that he was actually being bullied in school, and he didn't want to go to school. So she's like, I feel that I had reached a point of frustration, and in a way I feel bad about it, but at the same time, I'm so grateful that he was finally able to tell me something that he couldn't tell me in person, and whether he was afraid of what would happen or if he was embarrassed. But she's like, it shows that this actually works, and you've allowed me an extra sort of tool to help that communication. So I think once I heard that, I was just like, oh my God, like, it's someone who's involved and who sees it firsthand. And she's like, I'm telling all my friends about it. I'm, telling his friends as well too, who are also youth, to say, hey, this is something else you can do that you don't always have to say face to face if you can't do.
Yeah. For me, Monica, I'm a former school teacher. I've taught, kinder up to 7th, 8th grade. And one of the probably most touching things that I've had thus far is I've had a lot of my colleagues write to me and tell me that they've watched the movie. I've had groups of teachers during this COVID time say, hey, when Teaching Tolerance released the film, we gathered a group of us and we watched it on Zoom and we discussed it. And to me, I was like, this is exactly why I wanted to make this film, not just for ourselves, but for the educators that are giving instruction to the youth of America, the Latino, but we've had some of our colleagues have said, like, Asian students, African American students, white students, students of all types have understood what the message of this film is. And the idea that if there's somebody special in your life or something you want to say to somebody, there's an opportunity to say it if doing it face to face is too difficult. So to me, that to me was something that really made me feel so incredibly happy and blessed.
That's wonderful. Y Adriana, usted mencionó que ya que la película se ha estrenado en diferentes partes, que la reacción ha sido una reacción buena, pero también me imagino una reacción fuerte. ¿Nos puede explicar un poco acerca de
Sí.
qué tan especial ha sido la reacción de las personas que han visto la película?
Especialmente, fíjate que Eduardo y yo estuvimos en México. Entonces sabemos que especialmente en México, en este momento, en el 2020, pero en ese momento era 2019, creo que fue el año pasado, no importa lo moderno que puede estar una ciudad, un estado, un país, que de todas maneras habrá temas que son difíciles de tocar. En este sentido, para México y para los mexicanos en general, hay grupos que no y hay mucho avance en muchas cosas, pero para el mexicano en general es complicado y difícil tratar de hablar abiertamente con sus hijos de qué es lo que sucede. Mira, estaba yo escuchando a la hija de Carlos Fuentes, Cecilia Fuentes, que hizo un libro acerca de su mamá, Rita Macedo, y decía, ella es lesbiana, y dice que cuando ella habló con su mamá y le dijo, bueno, mamá, me gustan las mujeres, estoy hablando de los 80s, más o menos. Fíjate lo que era alguien adelantadísimo. Me gustan las mujeres. Su mamá dijo, voy a tener una experiencia con una mujer, nunca la he tenido porque te quiero entender. Y su mamá después dijo, pues no me gustó, no es mi camino, pero ahora te entiendo. Sin embargo, su papá, Carlos Fuentes, y Silvia, la esposa de Carlos Fuentes, la sentaban y decían, vamos a hablar, ¿y cómo es? Pero no es la mayoría, son excepcionalidades impresionantes. La mayoría es lo que nosotros hemos vivido, lo que nosotros vimos con el corto. ¿Qué era lo que sucedía? Yo ¿cómo quisiera yo que todos hubieran estado ahí? Para que vieran la cantidad de jovencitos que nos rodeaban y que rodeaban especialmente a Edward, para hablar de lo que les pasaba. Entonces, es muy conmovedor que cuando se presenta esta historia fuera de los Estados Unidos, en todo lo que es Latinoamérica, yo estoy segura, en cualquier lugar, no importa que no se hable español, siempre habrá una comunidad que le cuesta trabajo tocar el tema y por eso es que es tan necesario. No tengo más que palabras de satisfacción porque con que este corto pueda ayudar a un joven, con eso ya uno se sintió de verdad, sinceramente, muy gratificado.
Yeah, and Adriana, what you're saying is so important because I mean we know about the children who've suffered in so many ways, right? Bullying and abuse and all of these things, and I feel like this film is helping to open up this difficult conversation in some ways, but also sort of give permission to people to be who they are, right? And that's such a beautiful and powerful thing. And Edward, for you, I mean, you've been like living this film from beginning until end, and now it's it's out in the world. I mean, what have been some high notes for you, and is this film achieving what you hoped it would achieve?
Thankfully, 100%, because for me, the number one thing, as I mentioned earlier, was if we could educate and change the life of even one person, we did our job. And to save the life of one person, that's the most important thing. And for example, as Adriana alluded to, she was mentioning, when we were in Mexico City for the Mexico Shorts Film Festival, at the end of the festival, the screening, Adriana and I were doing an interview, and there was this young man that kept waiting, and I could tell he was waiting very patiently. And at the very end, he came up to me And he said, listen, I just wanted to take a second to thank you because my best friend tried to commit suicide. And she tried to commit suicide because she had no way of communicating with her mother who she was. And if she would ever have the opportunity to tell her mother who she is, and she hasn't done it until this point. But with this movie, I finally have something to share with her so that she can share it with her mom and hopefully finally open up to her and tell her who she is so that I don't lose her, basically.
Mm.
And, having that opportunity and, and there's been several other occasions. Vanessa and I were in a screening where another young man who was actually homeless. And he was homeless because he had run away from home because he was gay and he was Latino, and he wasn't expecting to come to our screening. And when he came to the screening, he just struck up a conversation and started asking me questions. And right away when he said, this movie moved me because I saw myself on screen, and I saw that, we can actually talk about this and that I can actually say it out loud that I'm gay and that it's okay to be that. And I was able to give him resources on where to, find help. And, those moments to me are the most important. And there's been many of them.
It's so much a testament to when you put your love into a project, as all of you have, what kind of outcomes are possible, and I do believe that you've each changed a lot of people's lives. And Vanessa, what's the experience been like for you? And, what have been some of the most important moments that you've taken from this experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can agree that it's the post-screening conversations that are the most rewarding. I mean, I think, again, once you're showing something, and so once you are able to have that human connection with someone, like that's always going to be rewarding in everything that we do in life, I think. And I think that also, just to kind of add to that, is like how that invigorates us. I think yesterday we were doing a Q&A, and we were just kind of, when we finished, it's like this is like propelling us to move forward in our own careers. So it's also a way of showing how that fuels us. So I think it's like this idea that we also need, this kind of support in order for us as filmmakers and everything that we do to keep moving forward. So it's kind of a nice, it's a nice way of bringing it full circle.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you brought us there to talk about sort of what is possible as filmmakers, because all of us, I'm not a filmmaker, as you all know, I'm an activist, but we all have a dedication to inclusion and representation of the Latinx community in film and in the arts, as well as to sort of ensuring that people understand that we as a community are not a monolith. We do have very different lives and very different experiences. And so, I'd love to hear from each of you. What do you've created this beautiful film, you've put it out into the world, it's now reaching many, many people, but it's really just the start, and what's next? What's coming from this? What do you hope will result? And in particular, what do you hope will result for the Latinx community in terms of making change? JM.
There's a lot there, and I think we each, that's why we are in the business of entertainment, because we want to entertain and also educate at the same time, right? And our film hits so many of those, as you touched, right? Representation. A whole big part of yesterday's conversation was that power of representation, of seeing yourself, on a screen, which many of us didn't have that growing up, right? And so they're all interconnected. What we see is how people sort of then view us, and then it's how we are then treated, and then that's how certain, policies are made, and all of this stuff. So it's all fits in with one another. So I think for us, and at least for me, is just to continue improving that representation and showing how unique we are and how we speak Spanglish, and we often start speaking English and then we transition to Spanish, and that's our reality, right? We are bilingual. We straddle that hyphen between being Mexican and American, or vice versa, or wherever you're from. So I think that's a wonderful opportunity that's going to continue moving forward, is finding those stories that have that important message and that have that heart that I think many people will connect with and continue creating. Yeah.
That's great. Victor, what's next for you with this project?
You know, for me, this was just the beginning of many, many projects that I have. You know, we've had these conversations, Monica, you and I. As a group, we've had these conversations. But, you know, for me, I love the fact that we created yet another project. I've written another project where the Latinx representation is not a trope. It's not something, a stereotype like many, the few times that we do see ourselves represented on screen, it's usually one of 2 or 3 types of images. And it was really important for us to have the very first image of a Latino, be a Latino lawyer. Because to me, that is exactly the type of writing, the type of characters that I want to create, the type of professions that I want younger people to really know that they can aspire to, that there's a possibility. As Vanessa has mentioned in our prior conversation at SPLC and what we're having now, and also the idea that they can be filmmakers, that, you know, younger folks, Latinx folk can really believe that they have what it takes. They have the stories. They might not always have the technical structures, the right camera, but I mean, we live in a generation where an iPhone is a camera. So to me, as long as you have the stories, you have something to build on. And so that's, to me, what comes next. More stories about Latino lawyers, actors, activists, you know, doctors, astronauts, runs the gamut, male and female, porque sí se puede, right?
Sí se puede, and I'm ready for it. I'm all about it. Y Adriana, usted platicó un poco acerca de la experiencia que estuvieron en México y la manera que impactó a la gente en México. Para mí, esta película es más o menos como un puente, ¿no? Entre la experiencia de una persona, un chico en los Estados Unidos y alguien que viene de México, etc. Para usted, ¿cuáles son las posibilidades de crear más puentes entre personas en Latinoamérica y en los Estados Unidos que a lo mejor tienen experiencias similares, que a lo mejor se pueden expresar tras películas y otras formas en otras maneras y formas de arte?
Pues todas. Y yo creo que este es un ejemplo maravilloso, como bien decías, Víctor, de verdad, es un ejemplo maravilloso. ¿Qué tal que por ahí se nos ocurre hacer, ahora que todo el mundo hemos estado encerrados en nuestras casas y nos hemos podido dar cuenta de verdad lo que tú dices, de que con un celular puedes hacer una historia fantástica? ¿Por qué no hacer un festival de Cuéntame tu historia? Acerca de cómo hiciste, cómo te sientes diferente, cómo lo quieres expresar. Yo creo, querida mía, nunca, empezaré por esto, nunca he creído que el arte haga ninguna revolución, pero sí creo que al mostrar la realidad, nosotros le damos la posibilidad al que nos ve de tomar una decisión, aunque sea no ahorita, sino después. Así que creo que este corto puede ser la base para que alguien más quiera contar su historia, hacer un festival, decir algo, animarse a sentarse enfrente de alguien, hacer una obra de teatro, etcétera. Yo creo que estos puentes que nosotros hacemos, porque en la película, y esto quiero decirlo, porque creo que es muy importante decirlo, el papá, por ejemplo, que es un puente muy grande entre la gente que es mexicana, no es ningún señor malvado. Simplemente es un hombre que al principio, por su educación, por su background, por lo que él piensa, se sorprende porque no está preparado. Entonces, lo más hermoso de nuestro trabajo, de nuestro corto, es que vemos la evolución de este señor por medio del amor, que es el amor a su hijo. Entonces, los que se entienden con amor, no importa cómo te sientas, no importa el idioma que hables, no importa en qué país está, siempre se dan con unas buenas bases.
Gracias. And Edward, I mean, your work, you know, beyond Bibi is all about elevating Latinx voices and stories and people, you know, so from your vantage point, what comes next, you know, flowing from this film, and sort of how do you envision using all the gifts that you bring to continue to do the work to elevate and amplify the Latinx community?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that this movie represents, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera, is unity. And I think one of the most, if not the most important thing within the Latinx community, within ourselves, is for us to unite, for us to be united. There's been a tremendous amount of lack of unity within our community. And if we all come together as we did with Bibi, anything is possible. And you know, my goal as a filmmaker, as a producer, as an actor, as a director very soon, my goal is to continue to unite so that we educate. Because if we educate, education, as we all know, is power. And the more each and every one of us in this, you know, in this Zoom, and everybody that's watching takes the opportunity to actually take a moment to educate their community and inspire their community, so to tell each and every other person that listens to them, because we're very fortunate that we made the choice to do this, which has given us a platform to have a voice. If we're going to have a voice, we have to have a voice of positivity. We have to have a voice because we want to actually make change and make a difference. And, you know, if we have this power, use it. Use it and unite. Monica, one of the things that I admire the most about you is your power of unity and what you do to do that. And I think more people, you know, and I'm always inspired by what you do, by what Dolores Huerta does, which isn't, I mean, there's no one more inspiring than that woman.
That's right.
The years that she has done, you know, to unite people together. And I think all of us, and Adriana through the many years of her work has been able to, you know, unite the Mexican community with the American community. And if we continue to do that, we do have the power to make that change. Adriana and I actually just started working on another short film very soon. That's going to be another form of educating, you know, a very sad topic, which is the disappearance of all the people in Mexico over the last 10 years. So it's another form of being able to share and educate and tell people all over the world, look, this is also happening.
Thank you, Edward. And Vanessa, you know, I want to name the fact that on this leadership team that we have here, you are the only Latina. And that is important because there are not enough Latina filmmakers. So first I want to honor your work and make sure that people understand how important it is that you're one of the few Latinas who've broken through in this way. And so for you as a Latina, as a filmmaker, as someone who is part of a project that really is about breaking down barriers, you know, where do we go from here? What's next?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's twofold. So I think, again, like just kind of what you were saying, which you're not a filmmaker, but to some extent you are, right? And I think one of the biggest things for me, and kind of going back to this idea of bridges and what I as a Latina woman perhaps have to do, is I do have to lean on people, and I do have to kind of open myself up to asking a lot of questions and kind of creating that bridge for myself, you know? And so one of the ways that I did that previously was I actually moved to Mexico City and I work for a production company there, and we all know that they're great filmmakers there. So I was able to kind of lean on that knowledge and that resource to kind of come back and have a career as an independent producer. So I think that we definitely have to be, you know, the doors may not be there, but we definitely have to be open to like knocking on them. And I know it's uncomfortable, and like, listen, moving to Mexico City was perhaps, you know, things that people were like, what are you doing? But when I did it, it was one of my best experiences. So I think, again, like, while we're making content that wants to definitely be thought-provoking, we also as people need to have these experiences. Like, we need to have kind of these very fulfilling experiences, because that's what's going to make us whole and complete when we're making movies. So like, you know, again, that experience allowed me to then just think differently, think outside the box, and then I can come to the table with more. So like my cup is full and now I can give more. And yeah, as far as projects, I think that, you know, one of my biggest things, I left a production company because I was like, I want to support female, you know, female filmmakers, and I want to make sure that I'm kind of the one who's saying like, this is someone who we should support, who probably the industry is not looking to, and I'm willing to do the heavy lifting. You know, I'm working on a project about a Latina Muslim convert. It's very unique, very specific to that, but I think again, I believe in it, and I believe in the filmmaker who's a 40-plus-year-old Latina woman, you know, and I think that again, those are the things, those are exciting challenges to me. And I think again, if we approach everything with, at some point, it is fun, we're not gonna lie, making films is fun, then we're up for the challenges, you know?
That's great. Well, I love you each so much. I respect you so much. I'm so honored to be part of this Bibi Familia. And I want to give Victor the last word here as the director to tell everyone how to find Bibi, how to check out the curriculum. Where should people go?
Yeah, if you all go to tolerance.org/Bibi, you'll find a registration page where the movie will become available to you, as well as all kinds of resources on how to, not only for educators, but from parents who are looking maybe a way of having a discussion with their kids, or kids themselves looking to sort of broach topics that are difficult with their parents. I want, before we end this conversation, I just want to remind everybody it's super important for us to just get out the vote. As Latinos, we have the power to really lead this country in a different direction. And we are doing this through film, but we need activists like you, and we need, you know, folks that are going to be watching us also to go out there and do their part. So, you know, please go out and register to vote, and vote this coming November.
All right, you heard it here. We all need to do our part. So we have jobs. We're going to leave this conversation with some jobs. One, we're going to check out Bibi, and we're going to tell all of our friends and family to check out Bibi. That's job number one. We are going to make sure that we are registered to vote, and we are going to tell everyone that we know to register and to vote. So I'm looking forward to the future. I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming from Bibi and its great success, and from each of these wonderful artists and filmmakers. So thank you all for being here, and we can't wait to join you again at the Latinx House.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Lots of love.